Hello, welcome to the latest video. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be looking at the under 2.5 goal strategy, but today we're going to be looking at a more advanced strategy compared to the one in the previous video, which was more of a beginner strategy, a pre-match sort of set and forget, if you like. So this one's going to be a little bit different. We're going to use the same pre-match research. We're going to still look for games that are going to be low scoring, but instead of placing the bet before the game at the odds offered pre-match, we're going to be waiting for around 20 to 25 minutes to see how the game progresses. And what we're going to be looking for is actually going to be looking for a goal to be scored in those 20 to 25 minutes. Now, I know that sounds counterintuitive if we're looking for under 2.5 goals, but the reason we're going to be doing this is to benefit from the higher odds that get offered as soon as one goal goes in as compared to the pre-match odds. So if we're doing our pre-match research correctly, we're looking for there to be less than 2.5 goals in the game. So we're looking at 2 goals or fewer. Now, just because one goal gets scored doesn't really change that pre-match research. The research is saying there won't be 3 goals. It's not saying there won't be 1 goal. We're not doing research on 0-0 draws. If that was the case, the odds would be much higher and we'd be profiting massively if we could predict 0-0 draws. So what we're predicting is less than 3 goals. So as soon as 1 goal goes in, that doesn't necessarily mean that the research is wrong. But naturally, in trading especially, you exit at a point where your trade looks like it's starting to lose. So if we had entered the market pre-match in these trades and a goal had went in the first 20 minutes, the advice would be to exit the trade and get out because your market is moving against you. Whereas with this strategy, what we're saying is when that first goal goes in, that's when you enter the trade. So we then are looking at hoping, it's a calculated risk, but we're hoping then that another goal doesn't go in the first half. So if 1 goal goes in the 20th, 25th minute, we're then hoping to be able to see our position through until half time at least, where we can trade out for a nice profit. And in some examples that I'll show you in a little bit, you'll see the price difference between betting pre-match and after a goal goes in. And it's quite a substantial difference. And it can make a lot of the selections that probably weren't value bets and weren't worth getting involved in pre-match, because there might be odds at like 1.5, 1.6 for under 2.5 goals. And it's not really worth getting involved in those. I personally wouldn't recommend them as value bets, but then they can turn into value bets once a goal goes in within 20 minutes and the market reacts by the under 2.5 goals market price going up as people expect goals, when in reality it doesn't really mean that there's always going to be goals. It could be quite the opposite. You could get a game where a goal goes in the first 20 minutes, 2 teams that are unlikely to score goals that both play defensively, hence the researchers brought them into the selections, and then a goal goes in. That team that scored the goal is then going to switch to being even more ultra defensive to try and keep that lead, because they sort of will be aware themselves that they're not a free-flowing team. They don't score a lot of goals, so 1 goal, that's all they were looking for really, and they're going to try and protect that 1-0 lead. Yes, the other team is going to try and attack more to try and retrieve the situation and to try and get back on track and back on level terms. But what we've got to remember is they're in the selection for a reason. They've shown up in this strategy for a reason, and that is they're not free flowing. They don't score a lot of goals, and they're not particularly attacking. So just because they've conceded a goal and now they all of a sudden want to get an equaliser doesn't mean they're going to be able to. It doesn't mean they can just flick a switch and all of a sudden we're an attacking team, we're going to go and score 3 and actually win 3-1. So yes, there'll be more attacking intent and there might be more defending to be done. If you play back into some of the other strategies with the corners, it might be worth a bet on an increased corner count, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be an increased amount of goals. So if anything, when the first goal goes in, you could have sort of the same amount of chance as before the game as there being over 2.5 goals. And that'll come to play at half time. If you place a bet or enter a trade after 20 minutes when 1 goal goes in at the higher price, you'll notice that by the time it comes to half time, the price will have dropped back down to more or less where it was pre-match. So I think in the example that I'm going to show in a minute in the Segunda division in Spain, the pre-match odds on under 2.5 were 1.68, I think. A goal went in 20-25 minutes. We got involved at about 2.18. By half time, no other goal had gone in and the odds had dropped to 1.61. So by half time, even though a goal had gone in, the odds were lower for under 2.5 goals than they were at the start of the game. And that's because the general theory that he's worked on for under 2.5 goals, it's a very basic theory. is that there'll be 1 goal in the first half and 2 goals in the second half, because second halves are normally higher scoring. So that's where that comes from, and that means that if there's only 1 goal in the first half, the odds for under 2.5 goals will generally return to where they were pre-match by half-time. So how does that help us? Well, it helps us because what we will do is we'll get involved in the trade at 20, 25 minutes whenever that goal goes in. I wouldn't suggest waiting too much longer, because the longer you wait for the goal to go in, the shorter the under 2.5 goals odds are going to get anyway, because there's not as much time in the game. So around 20 minutes is ideal. In the example that I show you, it was 25 minutes, and that, to be honest, I was about to cancel that, not cancel the trade, but stop watching that game, stop monitoring it. I was going into SofaScore to turn off the alerts and say, okay, it's too late. And the goal went in just as I was doing it. It was 25 minutes. I looked at the odds and thought, you know what, for the sake of the example, I'll put it in. But normally I probably wouldn't be in at 25 minutes. So yeah, you're looking at a goal to go in about 20 minutes. If you're looking to place a trade then for under 2.5 goals, or a bet, I call it trade, but excuse my daughter being extremely loud if you can hear me in the background. Yeah, so you're looking to place that trade then, and then you have to decide on your exit strategy. I would suggest either half time or around 50 minutes for the exit strategy. So by the time you get to half time, you'll have the same odds as there were pre-match, but you'll have entered at the higher odds at 20 minutes, so you'll have a nice sort of profit there. If you wait until about 50 minutes, that's the sweet spot really, because a lot of people will wait until after half-time expecting the team to come out fine after half-time. They'll have got riled up by their manager and they'll come out with a new vigour and try and get that goal back. And when that doesn't happen after the first 10 minutes or so, then the odds on under 2.5 goals will drop drastically, and you can take advantage of that. So if you can stay in until around 50 minutes, 55 minutes, and there's been no second goal, you'll get an even better result, and that will be shown in the example as well. I think in the example that I'll come to show, the odds were like 1.6 at half time, and then they dropped to 1.5 already by 50 minutes. Again, apologies for my loud house. So let's have a look at the example, and I'll come back and speak to you again after. Okay. In the Segunda division of Spain, which was on Sunday, which the day before I post this, I can't remember the date. So if we look at it here, we've got the under 2.5 goals pre-match trading at 1.68, which is a fairly low price. It's because the pre-match research will also back up it's going to be a tight game. It's expected to be a tight game, a low-scoring game, so you're not really going to get much more than that. So what we want to do in that case is wait for a goal, and we were lucky enough to get one in this example. So we waited until 25 minutes, as I mentioned earlier. It's a bit longer than I would normally wait, but 25 minutes, the goal went in to the home team to make it 1-0, and the price shot up to 2.18, which is a much nicer price to get involved in any trade. Above evens, we're always going to be in a good position to long-term profit from these bets if we stick to our staking plans. So we get involved. We get involved in the trade by backing under 2.5 goals at 2.18, and by waiting for that goal within 25 minutes, we've got the potential to increase our profits. So let's have a look at how this actually played out. So if we look on the left-hand side, the price returns to near the kick-off price of 1.68 at half-time. The left-hand image is half-time, so it went down to 1.61, so it was actually lower than it was at kick-off. So the odds actually suggest there's less chance of there being over 2.5 goals at half-time, even though one goal has gone in, than there was at the start of the game. And as I mentioned before, that's because they're working on the premise of 2 goals in the second half, 1 goal in the first half. But in this case, it's been a very cagey game, so that's dropped that even further down. So 1.61. And if you'd have traded out now, we got on at 2.18, didn't we? So you trade out at 1.61, or in this instance, you would lay at 1.64. You've got a tidy profit. I'm sorry I haven't got the cash out sort of graphics here. I wasn't involved in the trade. I've got an active account, but I haven't got a funded account at the moment on Betfair because all of my money's been spent on bills. But you can see, you can do the maths for yourself. You've got a nice profit there. If you cash out or trade out on Betfair at 1.61, you can equalise your profit, and regardless of whether it's over or under, you'd be in the green. So that's great. If we then wait until 48 minutes, now in the guidance I say wait until 50 to 55 minutes, In this one, at 48 minutes, I noticed that the price had already dropped down to 1.5. So just 8 minutes. No, not 8 minutes. It's like 3 minutes after kick-off in the second half, it had dropped to 1.5. So, I mean, that's a perfect time to get out, isn't it? I mean, the liquidity might be an issue right then, but you'll get matched in a game like this because there is plenty of money in the market. So if you trade out at near 50 minutes and lock in that profit, you've got even more return on your initial stake. So I think this easily demonstrates what we're talking about. It's a perfect example of getting involved after a goal in about 20 minutes, getting out at half time or at 50 minutes after the initial, the initial hope of the losing team coming out and getting a goal early in the second half after being fired up. Once that hope has sort of faded away, the price drops even more, and it's now at 1.5. So obviously, if you did wait until 55 minutes, you're going to be probably getting 1.3 or something like that. But it's always obviously a gamble, because if the second goal does go in, it's going to eat away at your profit. So I'd always suggest getting out before that second goal goes in, and no later than 55 minutes. For me, that's my exit strategy. I'll talk more about exit strategies later in the video, but you do need to be disciplined with this strategy. But yeah, I just want to show you that example. So we'll go on to a little bit of a summary of what's going on. Right, so as you saw from that example there, the strategy works perfectly when it works perfectly. I know that sounds daft, but I mean, when you do get that first goal within 20-25 minutes, you don't get another one until after the 50-55 minute mark, then it's a great strategy. What we do need to be aware of is it won't always work that way. As much as I'd love to be able to tell you that it will, it won't. So you've got to have clear exit strategies before you enter the trades. That's what I'd always advise. So by exit strategies, I mean a time during the trade that you're going to get out. You're going to cash out, you're going to trade out, depending on what platform you're on. You're going to get out of the trade. So it might be a winning exit strategy, it might be a losing exit strategy, it might be a trigger during the game. So examples will be the exit strategy is half time. Even if I'm winning, the trade's winning, it's 1-0 at half time. My exit strategy is I'm going to exit at half time for that. Slightly smaller profit maybe, but it's still a profit. An exit strategy might be the 55-60 minute mark. Perfect. An exit strategy might be if there's a red card, I'm getting straight out, which is a very logical thing to do because it can mess the game up no end, and it just makes everything pretty unpredictable. So that's an example of an exit strategy too. The exit strategies no one likes talking about or nobody likes to have to implement are the losing exit strategies. Now, with the under 2.5 goals market, normally people will get involved before the start of the game, and an exit strategy will be as soon as the first goal goes in, we're getting out. Obviously, that's not going to apply to us now, but we can bump it up to the second goal. So if you are unlucky enough to get 2 goals in the first half, then I would advise getting out at the second goal, because you're not actually losing as much as if you'd have bet on under 2.5 goals pre-match and you wait for the second goal to go in. You've basically got no equity at all because your bet's dead in the water because of the odds you started at, and then 2 goals go in. With this one, you're entering the market once 1 goal has gone in, so you're at the higher odds already. Once the second goal goes in, yes, your odds are going to drop. You're going to lose over half of your stake, but you're not going to be in the same position as if you'd lost 2 goals and you've been in from the start. That makes sense, doesn't it? Because if you're in from the start, you've lost 2 goals, whereas if you enter at 1-0, you've only lost 1 goal technically. So only 1 goal has been scored since you've been in the trade. Whatever. So if the second goal goes in, I'd get out. That's my advice to you. You don't have to take it. You can stay in, ride it out, and hope that there are no other goals until 90 minutes and win the trade. Brilliant. But I would get out. It's a lonely place being in that trade when you're just hoping that 1 goal doesn't go in. You don't want to be in that position. You don't want to be in a position where you're hoping. You want to be in control of your trading. So yeah, I'd advise getting out. If you stay in, it's going to be nail-biting, it's going to be nerve-wracking, it's going to put you off ever entering a trade like that again. So get out, basically. Get out after the second goal. It shouldn't happen often, but it will happen, and you've got to be prepared for it to happen. There's no point pretending that it will never happen. It will happen. I mean, you look at the Spurs game the other day, Leicester Spurs. I know that we're talking about injury time, but 2 goals in injury time, that's never going to happen. Don't worry about it. It does happen, don't it? You can get 2 goals in a minute, so it will happen occasionally, and you need to be strong enough to trade out and take that small loss And what I've spoke about in previous videos is you can always take that small loss and add it to the stake for your next bet if you want to, sort of compound betting, but without actually increasing your outlay. So you could leave that bet to run and lose that. What you could have put £10 on, the second goal goes in, and you end up having to cash out for £4. You've lost £6. But with that £4, you could add that to your next stake of £10 and put £14 on and win it back, or you could just keep it in your balance. But if you leave it to go and hope, then you're going to lose the full £10 potentially. So just have a think about that, and it's whatever you're comfortable with. But I would never be in past the 55-60 minute mark. I would exit every time there's a second goal before half time, and I'd probably assess at half time, if there's only one goal, I'd assess the flow of the game, how likely it looks for there to be a goal in the first 10 minutes after half time, and just you're going to have to analyse that yourself a little bit and decide whether you want to stay in until 55-60 minutes or get out at half time. It doesn't have to be one strategy for every single match. You want to vary up really depending on the circumstances. So yeah, this is a strategy that I'd advise for a little bit more of an advanced level, because it does have a little bit more risk, and one more goal is going to put your trade at much sooner a risk of losing completely. But if you follow your exit strategies and your pre-match research, the key thing is pre-match research, that you can't do this with any match that is 1-0 at 20 minutes. That's the quickest way to lose your bankroll. You've got to expect these games to be tight games and low scoring games. So if you do that and then apply this strategy rather than the pre-match strategy, then it can be very profitable. So maybe it's something that you want to try out yourself. With a lot of the selections that I give to subscribers, they are above 170 normally, because I don't like giving below that, because I know a lot of people use them as pre-match set and forgets. Really what I would like to do is give you a list of matches that qualify as far as my system goes, as far as my analysis goes, that qualify for being low scoring games, even if they're 150, 160, 1.5, 1.6, and just say to you, look, there's the list, put some alerts on, look at 20 minutes, see what the score is. If there's a goal in the game, get involved and trade it that way, rather than just putting it on and forgetting it. So that's something, if people are interested in, that I can provide, rather than sort of diluting the list and giving you the ones that have got more value odds for the straight bet. I can provide you with those, and that's something that I'm going to be looking to do. Obviously it affects profit and loss spreadsheets, which I need to sort of come to terms with a little bit, I think. So I'm trying to keep track of profit and loss, and people ask me about it because if they're going to subscribe, they want to know what the profit and loss figures are, which is completely understandable. But with strategies like this, if I'm giving selections on something like this, I can't really control the profit and loss because it's personal to you. So if I give you a selection at 1.8 pre-match and suggest waiting until a goal after 20 minutes and getting involved and then getting out at a defined exit strategy, you might choose not to. You might choose to put a pre-match bet on at 1.60 and it ends up finishing 2-1 and you've lost your bet. So is that -1 on the spreadsheet? Well, I chose to wait until the first goal went in 20 minutes, get involved and get back out by 50 minutes before the second goal went in. So I got a nice profit. You can't actually, there's not a one size fits all. So it's difficult to do profit and loss. But anyway, I digress a little bit. I hope you found this interesting. If you've got any comments, if you want any more advice, if you want any more tips, if you've got any areas you'd like me to cover in any videos, just let me know. And please do subscribe because it helps me out massively. So yeah, thanks. I'll see you again soon.